Welcome, everyone. Highlands Regional Chapter of the Maine League of Women Voters welcomes you to our candidate forum for the Dover-Foxcroft Select Board. My name is Eric Boothroyd, and on behalf of the League, I want to thank the Thompson Free Library for their help in hosting and organizing this event. And I want to thank our candidates and all of you for participating in this important civic event. And a big thank you to our local League members who are here to facilitate today's forum. I'd like to open by recognizing and honoring the Wabanaki Confederacy of Tribes who have been stewards of this land for generations. We respect their traditional values and affirm their inherent sovereignty in this territory. And we support their efforts for land and water protection and restoration, and for cultural healing and recovery. The League of Women Voters is a citizens organization that has worked since 1920 to improve our government and engage our communities in the decisions that impact our lives. The League operates at national, state, and local levels through more than 800 state and local leagues in all 50 states, as well as in Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and even Hong Kong. The League of Women Voters of Maine is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government of major public policy issues through education and advocacy. The League stands for the rights of all people to be active participants in their government. We educate voters, empower people to participate in civic life, and advocate for the policies that strengthen our democracy. The League never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. Membership in the League of Women Voters is open to people of all genders, backgrounds, and political beliefs who are age 16 or older and who agree with our foundational principles. If you would like to learn more about our work here in Maine or are interested in joining, you can visit lwvme.org or check out our information table. And now it is my pleasure to turn this forum over to our moderator, Carol Boothroyd.
Thank you.
Good job, Eric.
Good morning, everybody. I have my notes so I don't forget anything. Thank you for the introduction, Eric. Welcome to all of you at the library, or if you're watching on live stream at the GFL's Facebook page. As Eric mentioned, if you're interested in knowing more about the local League of Women Voters, we have information over here, or you can talk to any of the members. For the candidates, let me mention that the League of Women Voters is the nation's largest and oldest grassroots voting rights organization. And we are proud to offer the award-winning vote411.org, which is our nonpartisan one-stop shop for all things election. I encourage all of our candidates to take the opportunity to share their information with voters with the free 411 program. And you have postcards in front of you to tell you about that. We want to thank our candidates for stepping up to be of service to our community and for their participation today in our candidate forum. All registered candidates were invited to the forum. A couple were not able to make it, but thank you for those of you who did. We're all responsible for making sure that this is a civil exchange between members of the audience and the candidates. So please agree to listen with respect, ask questions that are related to the position that the candidates seek, and refrain from any personal attacks or name calling. The format of the forum is one that's approved by the League of Women Voters in Maine, and this is how it's going to go. Candidates will each give an opening statement, a 3 to 5 minute statement. That will be followed by a question and answer session, where members of the audience are encouraged to ask questions of one or all of the candidates using the cards that we provided. Our volunteers will deliver the audience questions to our question and answer facilitator, one of our favorite librarians, Michelle Dickens. And then lastly, candidates will finish with a closing statement of about 3 to 5 minutes. Does everyone agree to abide by this format?
Yes.
Is there anyone who disagrees? Great.
What happens if you disagree?
We kick you out. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. We would ask you to explain your reasoning. Do you disagree?
No.
Okay.
Of course not.
So we're gathered here today to meet the candidates for Dover Foxcroft Select Board and to hear their views on a range of issues. According to the Dover Foxcroft Charter, we have a 7-member board who are elected to 3-year terms unless they're elected to fill an interim vacancy. The Select Board has authority over a wide range of town affairs, and they generally meet every 2 weeks. So we will start by hearing introductory remarks from the candidates. I'll call on each of them in alphabetical order. So, Emery?
Great, first up, that's fantastic. And I've got notes and they don't, so I must be the least experienced here. So. Anyway, my name's Emery Cox. Thank you for coming. This is my first time that I've ever done this sort of thing, including speaking in front of this large crowd as well, so bear with me, please. I'm 63 years old. I'm an 8th generation maniac. Between my wife, Tammy, and I, we've raised 7 children, residents of Dover Foxcroft now. Clearly, I went to Morton Avenue, I went to Salamanca. I'm a proud graduate of Foxcroft Academy, 1978. I went on to study masonry at NMVTI. Before I started my working career, which was not in masonry, but more in the farming industry, I started at Dagway right here in Dover with Lou Dow and Dot Atkinson and Sid Stutzman. Then after a little while I moved to Australia and I spent better than 30 years working there in the same rural farming industry. The company I worked for was called Roberts Limited. They were a 150-year-old company. They'd been around for a while. And I was with them 30-something years. I was in Tasmania, the island state, just off the south coast of Australia. I was on the road working as a traveling salesman, working farm to farm up the sunny east coast of Tasmania. Some of my clients were guys that had farms 6, 10, 15, 20,000 acres, 15, 20,000 sheep, a couple hundred head of cattle, so they were real guys. And girls, their wives who worked with them back. In the end, and over the time, I changed jobs a little bit, but in the end, before coming back, I was the branch manager of a job. We were a $10 million sales store. We held $1.2 million in inventory, and I had 15 guys that worked for me. So, 2017, Tammy and I decided to move back to the state of Maine. I actually bought the house. We bought the house from my sister that I grew up in, up on West Main Street, which is sometimes good and sometimes it's an old house. I now work and have worked at Mayo Hospital for the last 6 years in inventory management, kind of like running the store as well, but inventory. I've been employee of the year in my previous jobs many times. I've been employee of the quarter at Mayo Hospital. So my local interest in town started just by being involved, if it was from being on the alumni committee or attending Memorial Day parades, which I feel is important. I started to attend select board meetings somewhat regularly 2 or 3 years ago, and I try to get there as often as I can. This year, I was a member of the Budget Advisory Committee, which I really enjoyed. It gave you a good place where you could ask questions and kind of get to the bottom a few things. Chris and I had a few discussions during that process. And I'm almost done, sorry. I love Dover, I love the businesses here, the people, the natural beauty, the lakes and the parks, and I'm running because I think I want Dover to prosper in all aspects, for us and for our children. I think I can bring a mature, responsible attitude to the board and have experience and skills. I want Dover to thrive and be part of it. Sorry, Dover.
Excellent.
Thank you, Emery. And next up, Elwood.
I wish I was that prepared.
I'm sorry. I couldn't have said anything if I didn't.
Well, I went to Pleasant Street School.
Yes,
Okay, I was a Dover boy. Graduated Foxcroft. Went on my own in 1980, self-employed. Never was Employee of the Year. But,
You didn't vote for you.
Donna did vote for me. No, I've been on this, I just finished my 27th year on the board. I've always tried to keep the town interests first and foremost. I've tried to find ways to save taxpayers' money on different equipment. I've been involved quite a bit with Public Works. I've taken Donna to different states to buy used equipment, which she found quite interesting, hauling some of these pieces back. But we didn't charge for that. They paid me for my diesel fuel, but we didn't get anything for the equipment, the truck or anything. Just try to do stuff to cut costs down. I located a front-end loader so for Public Works that was like $50,000 under what they should go for. So I try to keep the town's interests at heart. I try to listen to both sides of stories and try to get in the middle, try to be fair with everybody. I guess I'm not as prepared as you are.
Sorry. I used to see you at Agway.
No, it's a tough time that we live in. When you try to keep a flat mill rate and everything that you purchase goes up in price, all the costs are going up, and you try to stay up on your equipment, you try not to fall behind. For a while, we did fall behind on paving, just to keep the mill rate the way it ought to be and taxes from going up. But that hurt us in the long run, because now we're trying to play catch up. So we're even putting money away for, for buildings now, because that's one thing we didn't do for many, many years. So when you try to just keep a flat tax rate, it gets you in trouble in the long run. So even though it's painful at times, when everything that you deal with goes up, you gotta stay up with it and not fall behind. So, and I'd like to continue, I guess, looking for ways to keep the town a good place to live. I like Dover Foxcroft. I think, it's a great place to live. Been here my whole life. And I'd like to serve the community.
Thank you, Elwood. And next we have Stephen Grammont.
Well, I'm the only one at the table here that had the misfortune of being born outside of Maine. But I corrected that as soon as I could. I've been coming to this area since before I was born, and thanks to my great-grandfather having the foresight to buy property in the 20s when it was very cheap. And it came a time where we were living out, my wife and I were, well, we weren't actually married at the time, but we were living outside of Boston, and we're determining that one or the other of us was going to wind up in an orange jumpsuit pretty soon if we didn't get the heck out of there. My wife does not seem to be a violent person, but you should see her on the road at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we're backed up for 25 minutes, and because somebody decided to move a moving truck and get stuck in the road. But anyway, we had our option to move anywhere we wanted, and we decided to look to this area. And my wife had, because we were coming from Boston, we never drove through Dover Foxcroft. We went out through Dexter and Sangerville and Guilford, and therefore she had, in all the years that she had been coming up here, she had never seen Dover Foxcroft. We decided to get married up in Moosehead Lake, and we had to go pick up a friend of ours in Bangor, and we drove through Dover Foxcroft without any thought of moving to Maine at the time. And she said, wow, this is a really nice town. What is this? And I said, it's Dover Foxcroft. I had been here as a kid, but I hadn't been here in a long time either. And we, long story short, we got married while we were on our honeymoon vacation. We decided we needed to move to Maine. And we were driving back through Dover Foxcroft to drop our friend off at the airport. She said, we should really think about moving here. And we went through the process of looking in the entire area, and sure enough, Dover was the place we wanted to be. And I gotta tell you, it was a different world back then. They had, first of all, there was no internet, really. So went to the local real estate agent, they had binders with property in them, which is crazy. And we said, well, we're looking for this sort of town, this sort of place, but we're open to anything. And there was like 11 books, and he went and got one. And he said, what are the other 10? I said, not Dover. And we looked through, and that's how we came to be here. And apparently my chimney was built by Emery, so there we go. By the person who used to manage Agway, which ironically I wound up buying the building later on. And one of my earliest memories of this area was being in Peter's Pharmacy when I was that high. And little did I know I'd buy that building too. That has never ceased to amaze me. So anyway, I moved to the town. I had no interest in civic engagement, but then started to, because it's a small town, I started to get involved in things. Our previous town manager, Owen Pratt, said, why are you complaining to me? Get on a board. And so I became a member of the advisory committee, and was on that for a long time. And it is a gateway drug. So I went from that to the select board, and I've been on it for, I think this is 9 years, I think. And I've enjoyed it all. I have a background in business. I opened a restaurant here for 7 years in the old Peter's Pharmacy building. Yeah, recessions are tough on restaurants. And we opened up a nonprofit to provide food for the area. That is the Piscataquis Regional Food Center. And we started that up with our own money and our own time. So we have a lot of interest in improving the town in the area, and feel that it gives so much back to us that it's only fair that we give back to it. My day job is, or night job, because I usually work late at night, is I own a software company with a partner, and we've been doing that for 25 years. So I think that's about it.
Thank you, Steve. And now we're going to hear from Joel.
Hey, everybody. I'm Joel. Most of you probably know me, or you know the bakery where my wife works. Everyone's shaking their head, yes. There's some treats over there, but I just want to make sure everybody was fed today. Hence my gaining weight, because I have to test everything for her. It's worth it. So I'm Joel Vail. I graduated from FA class of 02. I'm a Mainer. My family's been here for generations. I did the whole DNA testing, found out they came down from Canada like 200 years ago, which was pretty cool, so I got to learn about my history a bit. Unfortunately, I wasn't born in Maine, so you're not the only one.
Okay.
My mother was visiting family, and I was born in New Hampshire. I came a little early, so I wish she had just kind of used some duct tape and got me over the border. That's fine. But I grew up here. I love this town. You know, I joined the military. I got to see a bit of the world. Always normal. You go places sometimes, and they don't have the same thought process, they don't have the same background. So after I got out of the military, I moved home, and I was trying to figure out what I'm gonna do with myself, like most people are gonna get out, because you, and part of this unit that's 24 hours a day has you doing stuff, and suddenly you have spare time, you don't even know what that is anymore. You're like, I feel like I'm in trouble, I'm not working hard. So I put myself through school and work with a number of not-for-profits. So there's a group I'm with, you've probably seen, called Elwood Edgerly. We operate in Ukraine, Afghanistan, and other countries, rescuing innocent women and kids from the front lines. We're supporting 5 or 6 orphanages now. It's over 1,000 kids we're trying to take care of. I volunteer with other ones too, and my guide service / survival school is now becoming a not-for-profit too, because part of my heart really goes out to low-income and vulnerable populations. It's very obvious when you go through certain towns or places, you can see, the old saying was like, don't go with the railroad tracks, right? Well, it's kind of funny to me because I can pick up where I see there's disadvantaged people that need help. And I don't think the government in general does a very good job of understanding what they really need. An example is when Afghanistan fell, and I say fell because I think the pull-up wasn't done as well as it could have been. And we had a lot of people in military bases, and someone didn't think, what do you eat? What does your culture allow you to eat? They were just trying to feed them, and I get that. But to see that some of them couldn't eat certain things because of their religious beliefs, and no one thought of that, it irked me. We have some very intelligent people here in this town, around the country, and I honestly believe that there's no big push here in this town to be disingenuous. I think that it's hard sometimes for the general public to understand what board members go through and the decisions they have to make, because there's a lot that goes into it. And when I moved back, I had zero intention of running for the board or being involved in politics. I'm not really a political person. I'm kind of middle of the road, and I just want to help people. I have a toddler. If you've seen him running around, he's 3.5. That was the biggest reason why I haven't really stepped up and done anything, because my wife goes in the bakery at 1 a.m. So I have to have him in bed and keep his routine going, and now he's finally old enough where I've transitioned him where I can do more. And I love coming out and helping people, and I feel like Dover is still exactly what I remember it was when I grew up. People that really believed in the community, and they wanted people to be okay. And so seeing that there was an opportunity to help and take some of my background and my experiences with me and bring it here was really what led me to step up and try to help. And the truth is, I tell everybody the same thing. I can't promise you anything if you decide to vote for me. I won't know until I'm in there what I'm really able to do, what's tangible for me. All I can say is I'm going to listen, I'm going to ask the questions, and I'll provide the answers whether you like them or not, because I'm not going to lie to anybody. I'll tell you exactly what the answer is. And I think in doing that, and I don't think that people are transparent, I think giving you the right information to understand the problem helps us come up with solutions faster. By day, I'm a program manager. I have had over 180 people directly under me. I've handled programs over $1 billion in funding. My goal is, if you give me $10 to work with, I'm going to get done for $10 or less. I'm not going to come back to you and say, yeah, but I need 20 more. That's not what I believe in. I think the government tends to think we have more than enough money to do that with. I want to see us make things work, like I believe the board's already trying to do. And I'm glad Mr. Edgerly pointed out, like, there's tough decisions that are made, and sometimes you have to look down the road how you're going to fix it. I think I'm going to do the best I can. And obviously I didn't have a bunch of notes to prepare for, but that's just who I am. I come in being authentic. So that's why I decided to run finally, to see if I can make a difference, and hopefully I can.
Thank you, Joel. So now that our candidates have introduced themselves, you, the members of the audience, are encouraged to use the cards that we provided to ask questions of the candidates. Please put your name at the top of the card, indicate whether you want the question to go to one particular candidate or all of them, and please keep your answers, candidates, please keep your answers fairly brief so that all the questions and answers have a chance to be considered. I'll turn this over to Michelle. She will be our facilitator for the question and answer period.
Sure. Move this. All right. Do we want to gather? I only have a few. Do we want to gather cards before we start?
We'll give people a minute or so to write, and if you have a card, just put it up and someone will come take it.
first question is from Ben Richmond, and it is, what book have you read recently? Emery, would you like to start?
First again.
You're sitting right here. I won't always pick you first, I promise.
Well, I'm not an avid reader, but I do try to keep a book going most of the time. The last book was, it is the last book I've read, 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I've never watched a Stephen King movie. I don't do horror. I don't do any of that, but my best friend said to me, this book's not, it's a good book, you should. Kennedy, time travel, the assassination. It was a great book. That's my
I am not an avid reader. I spend most of my time just trying to keep up to date and reading about new technology and just, you know, in my line of work, I try to stay up to date on everything, and that's basically what
I tell my kids at summer reading, even if you read the back of a cereal box, you're doing well. All right, Steve.
I used to be an avid reader, but I find that I really only have time to concentrate on a book in the summer when I do have a little bit more spare time. Otherwise, it just sits there, and then I forget where I was in the book. I'm an avid reader of non-book related materials. Part of what I do is a lot of research, so for my software company, so I'm reading ungodly amounts of stuff on a daily basis, but not in book form. No. Dry analysis of things, not really exciting.
All right, Joel.
I'm pretty busy, like everybody else, so I do a lot of audiobooks actually when I'm on the road, but my friend Pete Crittenden wrote a book called Survival Instincts. He's a Vietnam era Green Beret that does survival training and whatnot. He writes books for people to understand mentalities and like thought processes and things along those lines. That's the most recent hardcover book that I read. But I spend most of my day reading very dry government reports. So after about an hour of that, it's hard for me to want to go pick up something else. But I will read just about anything that catches me.
Excellent. Audiobooks count for reading too.
Oh, then I'm all in on that.
There you go. Yeah, audiobooks count. All right. This is from Tom Lazat, and it's for all of you. Do you see a need for downtown revitalization? What elements might that include? How about Steve? How about you start?
Well, I have to say that, so I have an interesting perspective in that I moved here when the town was at its state 25 years ago and loved it. Loved it even then. And the downtown has improved significantly since then. Never as much as we would like. We've all seen some downtowns that have been completely revitalized from top to bottom. Monson is a great example, but then again, nobody came here and dropped $10 million to fix up our downtown. So that does have to be taken into consideration. We do have a downtown revitalization vision, which has been chipped away at over the years, and we're about to get one of the major improvements, which is the intersection of Route 15 and 7, which nobody likes in its present state.
All right, Elwood.
Well, I can remember when you didn't have to go to Bangor to get schools, clothes, or anything. You know, there was 2 jewelry stores, Kritzky's, hardware stores, Weston Auto, and that's all gone. And it's a shame. We are trying to work with the state. They're not only supposedly going to do the intersection of Route 7, we're hoping they'll go all the way up to the next intersection and get through Monument Square. It's a long process. It involves a lot of money. We're just not sure how much our share will be, because there's always a share you have to kick in. We're always trying to figure ways to get the small businesses back in this area. It's not easy.
Excellent. Joel?
I think the answer is yes. I won't go into too much detail, it's kind of a long explanation. I would love to see the town find a way to revitalize downtown more. I think the big thing, like was just mentioned, comes down to funding and access. You know, I've seen places in the news do the same thing and had great results, but then you also hear of places where they spent the money and it didn't have the outcome they wanted. But I would love to see us find a way to kind of make it over what it was in years past. I think that would not only attract more people or businesses to help out, but just kind of brings it back to when I was a kid too. You know, when I was a kid, we actually did Halloween. I was gone for like 6 hours. And then once I started seeing the world, that wasn't normal. You did trunk or treats, that's great. But man, when I was a kid, 6 hours with my friends getting candy, I felt perfectly safe in this town. I can't say, even as an adult, I feel safe in other towns. So I would love to see us work on revitalizing and making this what everyone knows Dover to be.
Great. Emery?
I think that the town definitely has a responsibility to always maintain and make sure that we're in as best shape as we can. I think the businesses that are downtown are successful, and I think that when they are, they do their best at keeping their places neat and tidy, but I think that we definitely need to pay attention to what is downtown and don't let things slide. If it's excess snow removal or it's sweeping or lines painted, whatever that it may be, the big projects can come in as we fight to get the money for those, but every day we need to think about what town looks like and what can we do, because something needs to be done today to help out.
Alright, let's see. Well, there's one more for everybody for now, and then we'll work out it. This is from Gail, and it is, what is your vision for Dover Foxcroft going forward? Let me start with Elwood.
Oh, jeez. My vision. I'm more into the practical things on just how we can keep the elderly in their homes and not, you know, getting taxes so high, because now they can file to freeze their tax rate, but just making the downtown so that when you do drive through, you notice it's a nice town, you know, you're proud of it. Just finding ways, you know, to make this all happen. And it does come down to money a lot, you know, and the other thing too is we do have a lot of volunteers that do great things in this town. Little things just like moving forward with it. We had people complain about the flowers that we had around town. And I think they look great, you know, it's just little things like that, just set your town out that you care what things look like. Try to find ways, you know, to get some small businesses going in the area, to try to promote ways where they can be here and thrive, so that everything doesn't have to be funded off your residential tax base, so.
Great. Steve?
Well, as somebody who has started 2 businesses in town, before being on the board, one before the board and one while on the board, it's, small businesses are always under pressure, always have been and always will be. And we, in the time that we've lived here, we've seen the examples of what's been seen across not only the United States, but other countries as well, the consolidation to big box stores and now online shopping, and the impact that it's had on downtowns, which traditionally provided those services. When Ames went out of business and left the area, it was a huge hole. It was filled by small businesses shifting over some of what they provided, so we didn't have to go to Bangor to get certain things. But unfortunately, it's just the way that the economy is now structured, where there are just some things that are not viable in this town. But the select board, as overseers of the town's interaction with the businesses, it is I believe our common mission to ensure that a local business that wants to set up here has the smoothest, easiest path in, while also keeping in mind that there are other competing interests, sometimes competing interests within town, that have to be balanced. If somebody wanted to come in the middle of downtown and do something that was, say, highly pollutant to the environment, that has to be weighed in with everything. And so we have to make sure that it is easy for business to get set up here, straightforward, without compromising the ideals of the town and the quality of the community that we have. And that's something that I experienced as both a business owner and also sitting on the board. And anybody that complains about how it is to set up a business in Maine has never tried setting one up in Massachusetts. That's all I have to say.
Emery.
So Emery, vision, I think I'm a little more pragmatic, like Elwood. I don't have any wonderful, great plans, but I think that we do have successful business here. I think our future is solid because we have the schools, we have the hospitals, we have the library, we have the field house, we have warehousing. We have a solid core here and a lot of small businesses. The small shops and stuff all appear to be successful to me. So I think we really need to build on what we have, take advantage of our tourism, the lake, all our surrounding areas. We have room downtown for new businesses. I don't know how we're bringing some in. Clearly manufacturing is not part of that equation, but so many businesses are doing so well, broadband and all that. People can be very successful by themselves in their homes with good communication. They're raising kids and they're shopping here, and I think we keep it small town. That's my issue.
Rachel, you're
I don't have a grand plan in my head of what it's supposed to look like in Dover. I come into things more trying to learn and then decide what I think I can help with. I think it would be foolish of me to say, I know how things work and it has to be like this, because I think that's part of the problem sometimes is politics, is people can be bullheaded and decide it has to be their way. Well, it's a town, it's a community. So first off, we need buy-in from the town. We need to know what the town actually thinks they want and have that discussion. I think everyone here just made really good points. One thing I wish we did do better on, capitalizing on tourism. How many people drive right through here heading for Greenville and don't stop? Or stop maybe at Irving's or something, right? There's opportunity here if we can find a way to make it tangible. Something we can actually do to help bring in some more money to the town, and potentially bring in more people that want to be here and help with that. Running a guide service, is not easy. If one's ever tried to do it, it's hard work. And I love Dover, I love the area, but to get people to check me out versus somebody that's right on Moosehead Lake, pretty hard argument to have with them. And they're like, have you seen this view? And I'm like, I don't have that view. I guess you're right. But I also think that one thing we have not done well is I've not seen a unified single place for advertising our businesses locally. So imagine if we had something free, easily accessible that says this is what Dover has, and the people can update it in real time. Here's what's going on. We have the Chamber of Commerce, they do a good job, but something that drives people here to see what we are. Because having people come in to say, I drove 4 hours just to come check out this shop, that's huge. Because I've been in cities, they won't drive 2 minutes to go to a store. They'll go, no, there's one right there. To you, it's not the same. To them, they don't understand the difference. Dover's awesome. I love Dover. And I think the people here are awesome, and they're welcoming and loving. So I think there's a lot that we can do to help people see us in the right light and bring people in here that really want to be a part of our community.
All right, this is also for all of you. Do you think that the DF Select Board encourages citizen participation? And if yes, in what ways and how can the town do better on this? Steve? You were pondering so hard.
It's a challenge. The civic engagement in any town or city is much lower than it should be. And you can, I was just hearing about voting in East Timor, and their voter turnout is like close to 90% every single time, because they're a relatively new country that got out from underneath an oppressive regime, and they don't have money, but they feel that they need to be involved. And I was listening to that saying, geez, even on our best, we're happy to get over the 60% mark. And that's not just here, that's everywhere. And we've, over the years, both when I was on the advisory committee and then on the select board, we've tried various things to encourage civic participation. And I think that those efforts have been worth doing. But unfortunately, like every other town, it's hard to get people to come out unless there's a hot button issue. And even then, it's 20 or 30 people. And I think social media has hurt in-person participation and decreased the quality of discussion, which is why we don't participate in social media.
All right, Emery.
Well, I attend quite a few of the select board meetings, sitting in the audience, and at times, especially early on, it was a bit awkward. I couldn't work out exactly what was going on. And then it was, oh, there's time for public comment, okay. And even then, it still took me a minute to work out that public comment is just that. You have a chance to stand up, say your piece, and respectfully sit. It took me a long time to work out, oh, this isn't a discussion point going on here. This is a time. But I think sometimes my biggest part of that is, yes, there could be some more community, but as Steve said, there are not many people there. I think it's communication with the town, that if that was a little more to and fro, the town was responding to issues and hot issues at the time, perhaps the select board, it would be easier to stand, speak your piece, maybe be some conversation. Quite often it's hostile when there's looking to be back and forth. And you can see why it, isn't allowed. I don't know if that's the right word. You see it get out of hand easily, so I think the town itself has a responsibility.
Elwood.
We want people to come to our meetings. They can watch it on Zoom. We used to have the back and forth in our meetings, but it became a debate, and it was really hard for sometimes for, not everyone, but a few. It was very disrespectful, and it was turning into a debate. So we had an open session. We had to go to an open session where anyone can say whatever they want to, ask questions, make a statement. Then we close open session, and we have open session for the select board. And we try to answer all the questions that we can. All our meetings are open to the public, whether they're committee, or the select board. We do want participation, but we would like just everyone to be respectful. We don't have any issues with any questions. What people don't realize, at a select board meeting, you don't even have to have an open session. But we want to have input from the public. We appreciate the input, questions or answers or whatever, But it's changed. I've been on quite a while, and it has changed most everyone is respectful, but just the few that have turned it so it's very difficult to have a discussion without it, getting out of hand. And I guess because I got the short straw, I have to try to maintain a meeting, and it's very difficult sometimes to have a constructive meeting where we can deal with town business that we're supposed to be there doing. But we do want input from the public, and it would be great if more people would show up at the meetings. I'm all for that. I'm not sure how you get that unless you tell them you're gonna increase the mill rate by 5 or something.
Alright.
They would show up if you said that, I think.
Yeah.
I think they would, yes.
So, all good points. My point of view from looking at this from the local, state, and national level is that we have people that obviously fall into every part of the spectrum on voting. And some people are more opinionated, not necessarily correct, but opinionated on what they believe. And it's hard when people go into a meeting that's supposed to be resolving issues or helping, and they can't have an adult conversation. They can't actually work together. They just start fighting and yelling. It's unfortunate, but we all know somebody. We used to joke around in the military. Everybody had an uncle that was like that, right? You didn't invite to parties anymore because within 30 seconds there was a fight. And I started thinking back to a lot of people I met that in the military that went home and they started doing work for their town. And we were identifying that between news and social media, it's become very hard to have conversations with people. They'd rather get on the computer and throw mud and not actually act like an adult and have a conversation. I think the second part of that, though, is that without a great transparent system for the town to understand what issues the board is really dealing with and what things they have to overcome as hurdles, you're not giving the town people enough information to understand what to do. And that happens everywhere, and again, I'll go back between the news and social media. If you open the news and type up Board of Selectmen meeting, anyone at all, you're probably going to find more negative videos of people screaming and getting upset than positive, because that's what gets you clicks, that's what gets you revenue. They put more evil and negativity out than the actual positive. And I think it's developed this cloud over our whole society about, do I really want to get involved in politics at any level because it must be so horrible? It doesn't have to be horrible. If you care about your town and community, you're going to come in, you're going to treat people with respect, and you're going to listen to them. And even if you can't help them do what they want to do, you give them a chance to say their piece and understand where they're coming from. Plenty of times in my life, I thought it was 100% correct, and it took one person to break down that wall, and I go, oh, I was wrong this whole time. That's on me. So I would love to see more people turn out. For the life of me, I don't understand. In the United States of America, we pump our chest and fly our flag, talk about freedoms and voting. How come it's not a holiday when you vote? Why is it not a federal and state holiday to get every single person that can vote there on top of ensuring transportation? If that's the foundation and core bedrock of our entire society, why, even at the town level, do we have voting and we don't have free public transportation to get the people there that want to have their voice heard? It should be something that we are willing to do if we care about our community and hearing from everybody, not just your friends and not just the people you hang out with, especially those groups that are vulnerable, that maybe don't have access to a car, they're disabled. They deserve to have a voice too, and I think that makes a big difference.
All right, now I'm gonna pick on just Joel and Emery for a question. Sorry, guys.
Bring it on.
All right.
I'm fine with that.
She almost didn't see you last time.
All right, this question is from Gail. We'll have Emery go first. There will most likely be areas of town management about which you're unfamiliar. Have you thought of ways to become as informed as you need to be?
Well, I think really, as we all put our hand up, or a couple of us, it's new, so the learning curve is going to be huge. Being involved in the
Municipal.
Thank you, the Municipal Association government, and I have a book, you know, you can read through on how things work, how things are supposed to go. I have an interest in learning some of that stuff, reading up, getting involved, asking Jack Lukey, I guess, so, education.
Excellent, all right, Joel.
So how do I become informed? Some of you might have been my teachers, and you're probably wondering if that's even possible. No, so when I decided I wanted to put my hand up and do this, I started just asking questions to people in local towns around here, trying to get a vibe of what's going on. And hearing what people in different towns think of Dover too. And, you know, there's gonna be pros and cons to that. I'm not one to go into a meeting where I think I need to say something without researching it first, because there's bias everywhere. I mentioned how much I don't like the news. There's not a single news station you can trust people, I'm just telling you right now. They all have an agenda of some type, whether it's good or bad. So it's in your best interest to actually go and either pull the documents yourself, find the people running programs and talk to them and just say, I want to understand what the goal of this is and how is it playing out? Are there any obstacles or hurdles? What benchmarks are you using? For anyone that's ever done this, you have to benchmark, and most people probably know what that means, but it means looking at something that's been done by another town or agency that's similar, seeing what happened to them, and deciding, is it worth even going down this road, or how do I fix those little things they ran into they didn't account for? That's what I do every single day. Program manager, right? That's what you do. You're making sure that everything goes where it's supposed to go, your end is where it's supposed to be, your funding is lined up, you have buffers, you do everything humanly possible to get the outcome that you were told needs to happen. And while that's borderline impossible sometimes, depending on the situation, unless I've gone to the right people and said, can you explain this to me because I don't get it, or this is new to me, and then once I've talked to them, I'm gonna go find someone else. I'm gonna get multiple point of views and opinions from what I think are subject matter experts to understand what the root cause really is and what a good path we should be on is. And that's when you start an actual conversation. It may amount to something, or you may spend a lot of time talking to people and get nowhere, but you still have to try.
Excellent, thank you. All right, going back to everybody. How would the town budget be different if you had your wishes? This is from Chris Moss. Would you spend more or less? And if so, what areas? Elwood, you first.
Well, if you spend more, then you go back to that increase of 5, you know?
It's a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah. You know, I'd like to think that we would have enough money to fix all the sidewalks immediately, fix all our roads. But it's just not that simple. I mean, you have to try to balance it out. Chris always asks, what do you want? What do you want? Well, we always want. I do the same thing with Donna. I want a new tractor. I want this, that. You know, you have to compromise. It's not easy just because everything is just so expensive. You know, we're buying trucks that we used to spend $80,000 on, and now they're $200,000. And they might run, they might not. We're buying graders that are $800,000, and we're on our third one that barely runs. So, I don't know. That's a tough one. There's so many things we'd like to fix, but you have to balance what you spend your money on. Hot top used to be $27 a ton placed, and it's been up to $110 a ton. So you have to cut back what you do. My biggest concern is just how much, you know, property tax has to carry everything, it seems. And it's a tough one. I think you have to balance how much you do on what you can increase property tax.
It's my favorite Chris question. He asked those to me too, and I'm always like, oh, I can dream big. All right, Steve.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, that everything that is visible to the townspeople and say, well, we'd really like to see that fixed, tends to be the more things that we don't have any control over the cost, like roads, for example. And gee, wouldn't it be nice if the town could offer the businesses in the downtown some money so that they could paint or attractive facades in some cases. And we just don't, we can't do that. We don't have the money and the people's willingness, or we'll rephrase that. The town can have as much money in its coffers as the townspeople want. And if the townspeople wanted to go up by $5 million to do something, then we certainly could do that. But the standard response from people is don't raise my taxes, and it's understandable. So we have to make do with what we've got. We try to bring in outside sources of funding, grants, money from the state, things like that. And sometimes we're successful, a lot of times we're successful, but there's only so much of that money that we can go for, and none of it is really assured. So we're kind of in a pickle. There's lots of things that we would like to do, but as Elwood said, when you start finding out that the core costs of the town have gone up by way above the inflation rate. And what he didn't mention is that not only is that truck more expensive, but we have to wait 1.5 years to 2 years to even get it. And so now we have to make a decision several years ahead of time to lock in on a price, and that becomes a real problem as well. Joel was saying is that one of the most important things is to not judge what happens in this town based on what our personal beliefs are, excluding what is going on in the rest of the world. Recently I was driving around in a fairly wealthy suburb of Boston and hitting potholes left, right, and center. And I know that they pay 10 times as much as we do in property taxes. And they've got a way larger commercial industrial base than we do paying taxes. And yet their roads, frankly, I thought were worse than ours. And it does sadden me that people cannot understand that the things that they are rightly unhappy with around here are just, they're not limited, and they're not necessarily inside of our control unless we start spending a lot more money, and people don't want to do that.
Everybody's kind of thinking the same thing, I guess. Nobody wants to have to make people pay more money. In a perfect world, we'd find a good balance where we can still have a quality of life and get everything fixed. We're far beyond that right now, unfortunately, and it's not just here, it's the entire world. We have an economical crisis around the world right now. We have banks just folding left and right, it seems like. And for anyone that started economics, everything is tied together. The whole world is one big bubble, right? We're all tied together, whether we like it or not. So I don't think the town is trying to be greedy. I don't think they want to raise our mill rate or make people pay more money. But as they just said, everything has gone up, and it's out of our control. The example of the truck taking 2 years to get, and it's going to be $800,000 or whatever. That's crazy. It's a lot of money, right? When you start looking at vehicles and stuff, and getting equipment that might not run. That's the other thing. How upset would I be if we finally get the equipment and the thing won't turn on? Like, I would make up new swear words that day. I promise you, I'd be upset. I think that there's a lot of organizations out there that typically would try to get involved and help because some of them, that's what they're designed to do. They find communities that are struggling to make ends meet and need infrastructure upgrades, and then you apply and you go through the process. There's groups out there that do heavy construction equipment, and they always look for projects to help train people and have a workforce. So I think there's ways outside the box that the town can try to find some help on some of the projects, but ultimately it comes down to how far can you make your dollar stretch in today's economy. And it's very tough decisions that nobody wants to make. Everybody here probably has a budget at home. You know how much comes in every month, you know what your bills are, you know what you're left over with. You have to make do unless you're gonna take up a third or fourth job. I work hard enough, I'd rather not have 4 jobs going at the same time if I could avoid it. I wanna see my kids once in a while. So it's not easy, and I'm not a fan of raising taxes. I think nobody is. I think everyone said the same thing, they don't wanna do it. But it would come down to if it's the only option, they would have to. But again, I'll come back to, I want buy-in from the town. I want people to speak up. and come and say, we either agree with this or we don't, or maybe you know of a resource that we don't know about. Share it with us. The best we can do is go forward and try to make things as adequate and maintained as possible at the lowest cost. But I will never, ever, ever sacrifice the quality of the work for money. I'm not gonna go to a lowest bidder who I know has a horrible reputation and doesn't do a good job and say, cool, save us 10 grand, and in 2 weeks, everything they did is coming apart. I like long-term fixes, and I know that it's tough on certain roads in this state, right, especially dirt roads. You have to have the right material and the right people. Sometimes you look at the cost of fixing it completely, and it's outside of your budget for that year. Well, if you have a cascade effect, which in this economy happens, next year won't happen either. So you keep putting fill. Maybe not the best fill, but fill. People think you don't care about them. The truth is, you just don't have the funding yet. But at the same time, unless people in the town are stepping up and putting their concerns forward, sometimes maybe they don't know about it.
Emery.
Having sat on the advisory, budget advisory, in my eyes, we're open a bit to how things are, you know, where we spend our money, how we spend our money and stuff. I guess one of the main things that I saw at the time is Dover, like, we don't appear to be broke. We have money. Are we spending it as wisely as we could? Are we putting all our, you know, put our thoughts into stuff to make sure the jobs are getting done right? We're buying the right equipment. We're working on, is everything in a schedule that, you know, every year I've been back here, the gravel roads are bad. Well, it's every year we hear the same problem. So my point is, can we just start getting to a point where, what are the answers? Why can't we, you know, come to fix some of these things? Do we want lots more money to spend more money? Well, of course, everybody does. We want the best of everything, but it is at a cost. So, you know, you have to cut corners somewhere and whatever. But the way we did the budget advisory was, it seemed to be good and fair. You know, I'm not in favor of raising taxes either. But also at times think, could we as Dover, Foxcroft, as I've been here a long time, so we normally say Dover, are we benchmarking other towns in the state, in the country? How are we really performing? Are we that far behind? Are we okay? Are we doing really well? That's the financial controller of the town didn't speak to us on the committee, and I thought, well, I think that would be a good place to start, you know, and let us know how we're doing before we start the budget. Are we in trouble? Are we okay? And the community voice, and we all hear the social media complaints that come around and around and around. But yes, it does take money to fix these things, but let's make a concerted effort to get to it and to let people know why we can or can't, or what the time frame is. So.
All right, we're gonna stick to that topic a little bit. The question is, what can be done about the unpaved roads? The Dump Road, Bolton Road, Sedman Landing. Says, I understand there's an enormous cost of paving, but what are other options? I understand it's rural meeting, but the roads are so dangerous. There are many times this last season where roads were so impassable that emergency vehicles could not get through. What can be done? Is this a concern? I'm gonna go with you, Elwood, again.
Look that way.
I know, you can do this as well.
Yeah.
Well, what people should remember is that when I first got on the board, in the springtime, you had to have a four-wheel drive to go on any gravel road, full length, not just a spot here and there. We've come a long ways we're using road fabric. We can't afford not to use the gravel in our gravel pit, but what we're doing now is we are having an engineering firm come in and test the gravel and telling us, you know, we've actually had a crusher out there to crush material to mix into the gravel to improve the quality. The roads are a whole lot better than they used to be. You have to remember that Dover is 2 towns, so we do have twice the roads. We do have bad spots here and there on the roads, but we are addressing them. And it really depends on the fall that we have. if we have a really wet fall and you get a hard freeze right after that, then in springtime, you know you're gonna have some problem areas in your roads. We want to pave the dump road, but we have an agreement with the wood yard up there that we wouldn't post that road. I think it's hard for me to remember certain figures, but we do have a quote just to pave it, but in order to pave it so the trucks could go on it, we'd have to put down 5 inches, and I'm thinking it was gonna be 140,000 or something. I'm not sure if I can remember that exact number, but it's a huge amount of money, which would eliminate us from doing a lot of other roads that we have on the schedule. They are, experimenting with different mixtures of gravel out there. If we hired out gravel, some people have said that we should just hire it and have it trucked in. It would be roughly $140,000 a mile, and we just can't afford that. So we're working on, using the material that we have in our own gravel pit to improve on that. I checked into, I did a lot of research, a lot of reading out of book, a lot of research on roller compacted concrete. And we talked about that quite a bit, but the problem is, in the Dover area, nobody has the equipment to produce the concrete that you need. They'd have to invest in it, so they'd have to have enough call to make that investment worthwhile, and as of right now, they don't. Roller compacted concrete, you put it down just like you do hot top. It would look like a hot top machine. You can drive on it within an hour, I believe it is. And it would last probably 50 years compared to our 15 of asphalt. So, I was pushing to go that way. There's no easy answer. The roads are way better than they are. And every year we have a committee meeting and we review the worst spots and we change our schedule on the dirt roads to address the worst spots. So, we're aware of this. There's no easy fix. We're trying to get the ditches the way they should be to get rid of the water. So they are way better than they used to be.
All right, Joel, any thoughts?
I live on Door Road, and if you've ever been down Door Road, it is pretty rough sometimes, and amazingly, right in front of my driveway is always the worst spot. I went out one day, I was pretty angry, my wife came home, and the van was making a funny sound. I heard her coming down the road, okay? I knew she had to get some speed to get down there. 1.5 foot were the ruts out in front of my yard, 1.5 foot deep, and those weren't the biggest ones. However, I know that area is basically a swamp. I expect there to be problems with the dirt road in those situations. I know that the fill the town uses from a gravel pit is not the highest quality, but that's what Mother Nature gave us, and they're trying to find ways to fix that. Like it's been mentioned, to fix a road is expensive, because if you do it the right way, you're taking a lot of material out, you're putting in drains, you're putting in the fiber, the water, there's a ton that goes into it, and with the economy, it's even more expensive now than it ever has been. So is it a concern that EMS vehicles might not get down certain roads? Absolutely it is. I've also been down roads where I saw people that went mudding for fun because it was muddy and they tore up the road, and that's money we have to pay to fix it, okay? So there's avenues here of things that aren't really being discussed, okay? I think respect for the roads is important. When I see people doing donuts and burning them up, that may seem like a big deal until you remember that everything that goes over those roads means we're reducing the time that it's going to be viable for it to repair again. The rolled concrete, if we could get that, awesome. 50 years or over 15, I'll take that. When I was in Florida, everything was concrete down there. A lot of the roads were concrete. They felt a little weird to drive on because I'm used to normal pavement. I'm not going to say it's not smooth, but I can feel in between the concrete pieces, right? But after an hour driving, I didn't notice anything. I thought it was awesome. I think that weather, as was mentioned, plays a big part. We had an interesting winter this year, and it seemed like the snow went away a little bit faster than normal, and there was a lot more moisture coming down. So there's variables that we can't always plan for, but in time, if we keep working at the worst areas and getting where we need to be, I think we'll see a lot less complaints. And Mr. is completely correct. the roads are way better now than when I was a kid, I promise you. I remember some of those roads. I remember walking down roads to get to my friends' houses, okay? Like, you just couldn't drive them. People would park their cars and go. I haven't seen that quite as often. So if we can find a way to afford doing more permanent long-term fixes, I'm all behind it, but not at the cost of knowing some of you can't buy food or groceries or medicine.
Steve?
I think that this is, the roads are a perfect example of how engaged the town has been with its people. When I was still on the advisory committee, the amount of our paving budget was mostly coming from the state, from road assistance. And costs were going up at that point. The governor at the time decided that the best way to balance the state budget was to cut back on local assistance. So at the time, the road budget was $300,000 and something, which today is kind of fun to think that that used to be enough to keep up with the roads. And they scaled it down to 97,000. And the town, it happened slowly enough that the town every year would say, okay, well, we're gonna have to make do with less. And hoping, I guess, that things would go back up, but it kept going down. And I remember this distinctly. So we had $97,000 is what was coming in from the state. That was our paving, that was for paving, our paving budget. We had to replace a corner on Park Street, where, well, it's right around your house. That was $75,000 to do about 60 feet of road. And we said, the advisory committee said, we've got to raise our taxes because we can't just keep letting this dwindle. We're getting into big problems. The select board, which was not at the time, agreed. We went out and the select board hired engineers to come in and tell us what, well, actually that happened in the second phase. Figured out what we thought would be a good budget. We went before the townspeople. We tried explaining it, but of course people don't show up to meetings. So we relied upon word of mouth and through the newspaper, and it went before the townspeople and it was voted down. And not surprisingly, that did not fix our problems. So the select board went about it a different way. They hired an engineering firm to come in to assess our roads from an engineering perspective, to grade them and put them onto a chart and show the townspeople how things are going to go if we don't put any money in. There's a curve for road maintenance, and the longer you go without doing any kind of repairs to it, the more rehabilitation you have to do to get it back up to snuff. And it's not a linear. There's a cliff where you now have to spend way more than you would have if you'd taken care of it every couple of years. And this engineering firm did a road inventory, everything in our town. This was strictly for pavement. And we presented it to the townspeople. It cost us money to do this, like probably what, like $20,000 or something. It was not a small amount of money.
On the right.
Yeah, and we went to people and we said, here are your options. We can continue spending nothing on the roads, keep our taxes where they are. Roads are gonna just grade to the point where it's gonna cost us 10 times as much to get them fixed. And the townspeople responded positively to that. And we were able to add a permanent increase into our town budget to be able to afford the middle option that we had. So we're not maintaining everything to the highest standards because that was a lot more money. But we have that compromise where we can keep up with it. And I'll just also point in one more point. A friend of ours, came in from Germany, moved in from Germany, and was saying, I don't understand why your roads are so bad. He lived in the foothills of the Alps, like, our roads are great. And then he understood why, after being here for a while. In Germany, there is no townsperson input into the budget. The town just says, we are gonna do it to the highest grade. It's actually a little bit more regional. and they pave it, and then they send the bill to the taxpayers. The taxpayers don't have any say in it. So of course the roads were really great, but they were also paying 60-something% of their income in taxes. So there's that balance, and once he understood that the reason why our roads, or the reason why our taxes were so much lower than he was used to in Germany, is that trade-off, and he actually liked the trade-off much better.
All right, Emery.
I think I should probably start by prefacing that I live on West Main Street, not a gravel road, so I don't understand the everyday of, you know, the trouble that people go through that live on gravel roads, though I hear it all the time, and I do understand the emergency vehicle access, the whole, you know, people coming and going, and 4 children with sports, kids coming and going to school, and you've got to be in and out, and you've got groceries, and you can't just sit at home, because we don't want our kids sitting at home. People living on gravel roads need access, so the problem appears socially to be huge. It comes up every year, whether it's spring or autumn. I think just listening to what these guys were saying, with, you know, just different options, you know, can we do our gravel differently? We all know that we've got too much clay in our gravel, so can we responsibly, economically clean it better? The different processes of rolled concrete or whatever you said, or can we scrape the road and put that material back down with something else in it? I don't understand how we fix them all, but I find it very interesting, and all I want to know is that the board and the town is continually working on this issue all summer, all winter, and that we know that we have a plan of, you know, what roads are in trouble at the moment, and what can we do, because I've always heard you've got a problem on Merrill's Mills Road, but you can't run the grader out there, because all you do is bring the water to the top and make it worse. So I'm interested to find out, you know, how some of these different options that we can put into place, and again, get the communication out there so that people know nobody's forgotten about them. It's just we can't always afford to fix the problem overnight, and it has to be an ongoing thing that has to be reflected in the budget, and we have to communicate with the public what we're doing. And when we do have a major problem, we need to do something. We can't leave 12 inches of mud and people not being able to get in and out of their houses. But I am one for paving from Summer Street, the Milo Road, into the dump driveway. I must say, I would think that would be nicer. But when the dump road's bad, I don't go. I just wait. Not everybody has that luxury.
I know this is out of order, but I think it's relevant. I'd like to ask the question of, if we spent a mill getting these paved in shape, what would they think about spending a mill to get the gravel roads in shape?
Who are you asking?
Who are you asking?
I'm
Not me.
asking you if you can ask that question.
Did everybody hear Chris? Do I have to answer, say that again?
One mill isn't gonna do it.
Yeah.
That's the whole problem.
It's about $300,000 a year.
Right. And that won't even touch it. It was millions if we went out and addressed just the paving. We'd have a 30-year note, and at the end of 15 years, your pavement would all be bad at the same time, and you'd still have another 15 years on the note. So that made no sense, because you don't want all your pavement coming up for resurfacing all at the same time. So that's why we're doing roughly $400,000 a year on just the paving. I think the issue on the gravel roads is the engineers telling us on mixes that we put down, you know, with the road fabric, getting the right mix so that we don't, it's mostly fines, that we have too many fines in the gravel. So they're, you know, we've crushed material and we're adding it to the gravel to make it so that we won't, you know, have these deep ruts. But there will be areas where you've got a spring under a road that you're never gonna solve that problem. There will be short sections that you will simply not be able to fix easily. But the majority of the roads are getting in a lot better shape. But viewpoint on a mill. A mill is,
Go ahead, Steve.
I think part of the problem we have to recognize is that some of the roads were put in places that there shouldn't be roads. And you were saying, you're in a lowland area. One of the challenges that we have in Maine, but in Scottsbluff County in particular, is that the bedrock is like what? Sometimes it's right at the top. And so there's not a lot of room in the soil. This was something that, again, my German friend didn't understand. It's like, why do the roads heave? And he said, because we're sitting on top of bedrock, there's no room for the water to shed. And where he was in the Alps, that was not the case, they did have thick soil. So, I gotta think that we're gonna run into problems if we pave some of the areas that are currently most problematic for gravel. How well that will hold up from a pavement standpoint over time. And will those sections of road have to be constantly cut out and rebuilt? And unfortunately, we've, from an engineering standpoint, we've been dealt a really bad hand where we live. This is pretty tough. Talk about down in Florida, they've got other problems down in Florida, like that the road might be underwater pretty soon. But frost heaves and the action of winter and the abuse that the roads take during the winter, because we actually drive on them, and we have to plow them and everything. It's just we've got, and then of course from the construction supply standpoint, we're at the end of the geographically for all of the materials and the contractors. In Massachusetts, you can have it done a lot cheaper because there's the volume and all that stuff is down there. We're way out on the periphery. So there's always something, we should always be looking at how we can do things better. But in terms of Chris's question about just throwing money at it, some of the stuff is just an engineering challenge that is either unsolvable or is solvable at a cost that nobody wants to afford.
Joel or Emery, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Go ahead, Emery.
I agree with Elwood and Steve. I think paving some roads, yes, it would be wonderful, but as long as I know that we're doing everything that we can structurally to maintain our gravel roads and we address hot spots, either when they happen, but in the downtime, summer and fall or something, that's at least, and then letting the public know what we're doing. We're working here, we're doing this, we're fixing, we're on the such and such a road. We know there's a problem. Maybe letting people know, as far as the town, letting people know that we know there are problems there. We're not ignoring it. We understand, and we would like to fix them. It costs money. We'll spend our money wisely, but let's spend it once as well. Spend our money once. Do it properly.
Great. All right, we're gonna keep talking about making the town better and nice. This is for all candidates. I'm gonna start with Joel because this is kind of your space.
Send it.
If elected, what would you advocate for as a plan to address the vacant or underutilized storefronts?
That is a very good question. There's a lot of complexity in that. So the 3 points I look at when trying to attract businesses, first is equitable ownership, okay? So if they're looking to rent a building, is it honestly equitable for them? So is the rent something they can afford? Is the person that owns the building, do they have a good reputation of keeping up with the building? I feel like there are probably some places here in Dover that over time have not been maintained very well, and that's why places don't like to stay there. They have, whether it's electrical issues or water leaks or rats, who knows, whatever it may be. There's certain things that are a detriment to someone trying to come in and start a business here. Marketing is the second point, I touched on that earlier. If they don't know you're there, they're not gonna come and see you. People are used to going to Bangor or going on Amazon now, instead of going, hey, right down the road, you get you one, and it's right there today. The other point is, of course, it depends on the status of the building, okay? So as an example, there's a lot of laws and things about, let's say, land that's been taken by the town for not paying taxes or whatnot. So what I learned rather recently was that while it seems great to bid and buy those properties, depending on the situation, the original owners have X amount of years to come back, pay it, and take it. So let's just say you bought a piece of property, you put a house on it, you're happy, 2 years down the road, they can come back and pay the property taxes, and now they own it. How would that make you feel if there was a law? And I was told that it does, it actually exists. Not as well known, but I was told when I was looking at some stuff and that, I thought, well, wouldn't that be a detriment to a business to think like, I wanna buy this building, but what if I pour this money into it and then they just come back later with the money they owed and I lose out? No. I think that the proposition in this town of starting a business can be a little overwhelming, but I will also say, I don't think the town has put up barriers to stop it. I think some of the biggest challenges we face is people have good ideas, they don't have the experience to turn that into a business, okay? Just because you make the best pie in the world, unless you know how to make a business plan and how to run that business efficiently to get it out there and do the marketing and all that work, you can have the best pie, no one's gonna know it. So I think sometimes we've seen townspeople have really good ideas, they don't have the business knowledge to make it successful. And we have resources for that. I mean, right in Bangor, we have people that come here to the library that help with that stuff. They will help you draft a business plan, they'll help you understand that stuff. So coming in, you have the strongest foot forward to be successful. And I think sometimes it's more of education to help them succeed than to just say, here, sign the lease, good luck, we'll see if you last 6 months. And again, going back to that centralized marketing online website or something where Dover puts us up on the map by saying, here's everybody here that does this, and here's when they're open, come check us out. A one-stop shop. And I think that would have a lot of buy-in from the town.
All right, Steve.
So we have the pros and cons of the free market and property ownership is that if somebody wants to buy a piece of property in the downtown and let it go to rack and ruin, there's nothing that we can do if that's the person's determination until it's gone over the cliff or they stop paying taxes. And we always have had property in downtown that has just been sitting there idle. And it's not because there isn't a need for or utilization that could happen there, but that the property owner doesn't care. Or, I mean, I helped rehab what used to be the Peters Pharmacy building, which is now Pat's Pizza, and that building had been vacant for 18 years, I think, before the McKennies got it started, and we took it over from them. And that was a case of townspeople, citizens of the town finding that they had an opportunity to purchase that property, and they put the money into making it into something. And they didn't care what, they just didn't want it to sit there continually falling apart. And then when we purchased it from them, we continued that on, and then that was sold off to Pat's Pizza, and it's been now in continual use since 2003. And after 18 years of being idle, it's now spent more than that active. So it is, unfortunately, unless this town is going to adopt some pretty draconian downtown rules, and I grew up in a town with an historic district where the town decided what paint you used. I don't mean the color, I mean the brand. And, but my father would always complain about that, and I said, well, how much did you sell your house for when you left? He's like, well, all right, a lot more than I paid for it. I'm like, yeah, okay. So there's the pros and the cons. And we here in this town have the more common, especially in Maine, which is the laissez-faire, let people own the property and do what they want with it. The downside of that is that we are not in control of the look of the facades in town or the activities that happen in the buildings or the condition that they're in.
Alright, Emery.
Again, I guess I would say that is private property and the owner's prerogative to do as they please, but I think as a town, we need to do everything we can to make sure that downtown, the part we can control, is in its best shape and, you know, best foot forward, and just capitalize on all the stuff that is here, that is positive, and grow on that will then attract more people, which attracts a business, and somebody will eventually come in and move into a building, start a business. I guess that's, and we want them to paint the front of it. It's not our responsibility as the town to paint it, but I think if we start looking after, get all our ducks in a row, making sure we do as best job we can, maybe it's shame them into looking after their own building. That's me.
Elwood, you wanna finish that up?
Sure. Your point that it is privately owned, so I don't know what power they think the select board has. The only thing that we can do is make them aware of different funding paths that they can go to help out. And we've had a few grants here where people could apply for it to improve their storefronts. Some did, some didn't. I think our job would just be to promote everything that's out there to help them move ahead with their business.
Alright, this one's for everyone. What community issues do you think are most important to address? Emery, we start with you.
I think from what I hear, I guess if I picked on social media for a bit, which I do read some of the Dover stuff, and I think a lot of the stuff that's the major concerns in town, and I think they're important, and they're always repetitive, they're over and over again, but they're the things people see, and it's the stuff that people deal with every day, and they see it as a problem, but I believe we as a town need to make sure we're addressing those issues, whether it's snow plowing, paving roads, painting lines on the road, sweeping, just the stuff chasing money so that we chase money from the state so that we can improve our stuff. But I think our focusing when I get on is just to make sure that the town is paying attention to, as much as some people dislike social media, it's where the negative stuff comes from, and it breeds more negative. And I think we just need to be clear that we're trying to address lines painted on the roads. I mean, here we are, we're almost Memorial Day, and, you know, I don't know that we're ready for our tourism industry. I know that a lot of us live here that are not tourists, but we rely on them for a lot of income, so I think our town, lines, plowing, potholes, paved roads, the beach, whatever, that's it.
Okay, great. Elwood?
Well, I don't think Dover's that bad a place. You hear a lot of negative, but there's a lot of positive going on here. I mean, the concerns are roads, we are addressing them. There's only so many people that you can choose from to paint your lines. They're all busy. We're at the other end, so there's not many to choose from, so we're at their mercy to a certain point. They don't last as long as they used to, any of the lines they put on, because they've taken all the good old lead out of the paint. So it just doesn't last. And they haven't come up with anything to really improve on that. Roads are a big issue. We're addressing that. But overall, our town is in good shape. There's always something that you can improve on, always, something to move ahead with. The budget, I mean, I've been on when we were almost having to borrow money to pay bills. We're not at that situation right now. We're putting money away for capital. We are addressing a lot of issues. Nothing happens overnight. A lot of people don't realize that West Main, East Main, Summer Street, North Street, South Street is state. The state has to maintain those roads. If we start patching all the roads for them, they'd be very happy.
Actually, they'd find us.
Yeah, they probably would, yeah. The sidewalks, if we address any sidewalk on those streets I just mentioned, they all have to be brought up to federal specs. So all that granite that's set in concrete, that's all gotta be taken back out. All your ramps have to be ADA. So any sidewalk that we do on a state aid road is gonna cost us thousands of dollars. So we're coming up with a plan to do state aid road sidewalks compared to our sidewalks. So, roads, plowing, you're right, that's all an issue. We buy new trucks. The new trucks, 2 of them were down in one storm because of the pollution equipment. And there's so much electronics on them that you have to actually call a guy in with a computer to reset everything. It's a big issue. They're doing the best they can. We're trying to move ahead. But overall, it's a great community. Schools, hospital, what we have here. It's an awesome place to live.
Steve?
I think what we need to do to keep everything looking the way it is and functioning as well as it is, and I do agree compared to some of the other towns, not just in this area, but countrywide, we're doing pretty well. And as Elwood said, we're keeping up with things, at the very least. Obviously, the discussion has gone on tonight. We all can see room for improvement, but we're not going into the hole to get there. And I think that we're going to enter a phase of being very difficult to maintain a lot of different things for a lot of different reasons, and that has nothing to do with us. Elwood just mentioned about code resets on trucks. So here's a little bit of trivia that people don't think about. The emission controls and other things that are in the vehicles, these big, expensive vehicles, they have a brain in there, and the brain shuts down the vehicle if it thinks it's going to be damaged. And it doesn't care if you really need to go out and plow. Truck maintenance is becoming a big problem. The equipment that is necessary to maintain them has gone up. The amount of people to do it has gone down. I have a large truck that I have to deal with, and we had it sitting in Bangor at the dealer for 2 weeks, looking for them to just reset that code. And we had an appointment to get in. It wasn't just, so anyway. And they're having problems getting engineers. They used to work 6 days a week. Now they're down to 5 because they can't find the workers. And that sort of thing is trickling down to us, where we can't there's only so many line paving companies out there. And there's just as much work as there was before, and they're having difficulty keeping up. We have a problem with paving contractors. They're overstretched. We've gotten less than stellar performance out of some, but I've known towns around that have gotten even worse. And there's just only so much of this stuff going around. The equipment cost for them is going way up. Their labor costs are going way up. They're having difficulty finding workers. These things are all becoming more apparent to people. And there's labor shortages. We've got people that are going to be retiring. We're going to need to replace them. Nobody seems to be interested in municipal jobs anymore, the way they used to be. And I think a big challenge for the town in the next 5 years or so, is trying to make sure that we remain competitive with our workforce, because if we do not have people to plow the roads, I guarantee you the roads are not gonna be plowed. Even if the truck is sitting there, perfect. So this is my major focus, I think, for the next few years, if I'm reelected, is to make sure that that the town is doing everything it can to maintain quality workforce and equipment necessary to keep the town maintained.
Right, Joel?
I agree with what everybody else is saying. I mean, it's a delicate balancing act. We're looking at budgets, of course, and everywhere is experiencing a lack of an adequate workforce. You know, and the argument there is, well, if you're equitable and you pay them enough, they'll come. That's not true. That is not true, okay? I've seen many jobs that paid way more than I thought they should have paid, and they could not fill a position. It comes down to people wanting to do the type of work. And I think for some reason there's this stigma out there now about people thinking they're worth $1 million a week. That's what they've been told. They've been brainwashed to think that. Well, you have to have the skills to match the pay. I mean, everyone knows that. You wouldn't walk into a Fortune 500 company and say, CEO, you're out, I'm in. What's your qualifications to do that? So it's hard to attract good employees sometimes, ones that are efficient and work well and do the job. On top of that, the rising cost of everything, from fuel to oil to maintenance. I mean, he's just saying it's tough. And so the town has to be very thrifty in what they're trying to do and plan things out. You know, you plan for the worst, hope for the best every single time. I think that there's also a disconnect between what the board is responsible for and what people think they do. And maybe if the town's a little more aware of what really is in their purview, they would understand there are certain things that is not their responsibility, certain things they can't do. I, for one, think governments have way too much overreach. As a private citizen, the government shouldn't be telling you how to live your life. Like, they enforce laws and things, absolutely. But I feel like we've been sliding down this scope of, I want the government to do everything for me. And that is not what America is, and that should never be that way. We should have a say in how things go, and we should have a guiding hand in the trajectory that we're going on. And so, one, I think helping the town understand really what the Board of Selectmen do, what they're responsible for, is key. We have committees, of course, that do other things to provide information, so if people get involved there, go for it. But there's going to be some very tough decisions coming down in the next 5 to 10 years, because you have to find ways to make things work, but maybe the money isn't always there. I don't want to borrow money. I wouldn't want to hear the town has to borrow money to pay for stuff, because now you end up owing more money. Anyone that's ever done loans, interest rates, APRs, you know that's a lot, and most taxpayers probably don't think of that. The other thing I think that happens sometimes due to social media is people take issues from other places that are not an issue here, and they bring it here. They try to say, this is such a problem. Show me the problem. Well, you can't, because Dover does not have that specific problem. Milo might, Portland might, some place in Washington might. But people get very invested emotionally in things they see online or from friends and family that tell them that, and they think that must be happening here. And then they go about trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. I want to handle issues that are really a problem for the town. I want to make sure everyone here, no matter what you believe, what your skin color is, your race, your religion, anything, that you're equitable, you're treated fairly. I've never in my life in Dover felt like that wasn't the case. I've never seen someone get chased out of town screaming out because they didn't agree with something. I've never seen that. So I think that more communication to get people to understand what is legitimately happening and what we can fix is the key to getting buy-in and seeing things turn in a direction that makes people less filled with animosity when it involves something like that.
So, keeping an eye on the time, we still have some questions that you submitted up here to Michelle. Did a great job, thank you. But we don't have time. So I would encourage you, if your question didn't get answered, to seek out the candidates and ask them the questions. I'm sure they'd love to have phone calls at home, right? Maybe not. But anyway, time, we just don't have any more time for questions. So we're going to move on here to having the candidates each make their closing statements. And we're going to go in reverse alphabetical order. So Joel, you're up first.
You've all heard me talk so much already. I'm just here to try to help where I can. And I can't do that unless the town actually tells me the concerns. I don't wanna be someone that just sits at a table and does stuff without buy-in, and I think my biggest process is I wanna understand how stuff works, how it's supposed to work, more importantly, and then address the concerns that I can actually help with. And my answers are gonna be, I'll look into it, I'll try. You're not gonna hear me say I don't know and walk away. I'll say, yeah, I don't know, but let me find out. And I think that's the best way to do this. I don't think I can save the world, but I can start by making a difference here. So I hope you can consider me. Feel free to vote for me. You can email me anytime. I would say call, but again, I live on Door Road. There's like no reception there, ever. I'll get voicemails that pop in a day late, and I'm like, oh, I wish I had been outside, I guess, when that came in. But I am at your disposal anytime. If you want me to come over and chat with you, have a question, just get in touch with me.
Thank you. Steve?
So I moved here voluntarily, I stay here voluntarily. If I didn't love this town and believe in the quality of the experience that I had from this community, I have the means to pick up and move somewhere else. And so I elected to be here, and I elect to stay here. And I see no reason why I should be looking for property outside of this town. And if anybody wants to buy my house and fix it up, and give me a house that is already fixed up, I would appreciate that. But it has to be in this town. So I feel that we, meaning all the people that volunteer to keep this town going, and although the select board members are paid a stipend, it's, I don't think any of us want to do the math as to what it comes out to be per hour.
I didn't know that.
We forget it too, because we all put in a lot of time and energy and love into this town, and it shows. And if it wasn't there, I'd be looking to move. So I'm very, very happy to be putting my time and energy into this place, and I'm very thankful that the community is as well.
Thanks. Elwood?
I do think Dover's a great place to live. I don't think everything is wrong here. We do have issues that we have to work on and try to solve. I do try to dig into different things to try to find ways to just put out a better product that lasts better. The roads and everything are always an issue, but we're continually trying to work to give answers to make it better. I think history is a good thing, and I have a pretty good history here. Well, things that we've done that have worked and things that haven't worked. But I think the town's in a good spot, and I'd like to continue to help improve things.
Thank you. And Emery?
Well, I grew up here. I'm a pony through and through. I love this town as well. I have been away. I've been away to a place where they vote on Saturdays, and it's mandatory vote. So if you don't vote, you get fined. But I'm back in town. We're back in town. We love it here. I think I've done a few things. I want to bring a mature, responsible approach. I want to listen and learn. God, I like sitting up here with these guys just here going, oh yeah, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know the stipend either. But it's our buildings, it's our infrastructure, it's our community that I'm interested in, it's our workforce. I want to get involved, and I am involved, but I'd like to be more involved, so I'd like your support, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our candidates. Thank you to the audience. Awesome. This is the sixth candidate forum that the Highlands Regional League of Women Voters have hosted. One in Newport, one in Corinth. and 4 in Dover Foxcroft, and I really think this is one of the best, so thank you all. Before we go, I want to remind you, be sure to vote on June 13th at Morton Avenue polling place. And if you vote by absentee ballot, remember your ballot has to be in the hands of the clerk by 8 p.m. on election day. And also, if you're not registered to vote, remember in Maine, you can register to vote up to and including election day. And if you are an absentee voter, remember that the last date for getting an absentee ballot with no particular excuse is June 8th. And lastly, I'd like a little input from you. We know there are going to be some referendum questions on the November ballot, and in particular, one is going to deal with the possibility of a consumer-owned electric utility. I'm sure you've all heard about this. So our Highlands Regional Chapter is considering trying to do an informational forum on the pros and cons of that proposal. And so what I'd like from you is a show of hands. If that is something that you think you would be interested in coming to, just put your hand up. Great. Well, that's very encouraging. Thank you very much. So thanks to everyone. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to vote on June 13th. And thank you for the snacks.
Thank you very much.